They killed our ambassador. Humanity's response stunned the galaxy. Part 1. The stars above Varellis burned cold and steady, indifferent to the fragile hopes carried by the small shuttle descending through the planet's thin violet atmosphere. Inside, Ambassador Daniel Cruz adjusted his collar and glanced out the viewport. He had seen 100 worlds by now, but Varelli still held a strange beauty, its twin moons casting silver ripples across the glass-like lakes, its spires of crystalline alloy rising like frozen music from the plains below. This was the place where humanity might finally be welcomed into the Galactic Concord, not as petitioners but as partners. Daniel wasn't a soldier or a scientist. He was a teacher before he ever wore a diplomat's pin, and that part of him never left. He believed in listening first, speaking second, and never assuming you knew what the other side truly wanted. That was why Earth had sent him. Not because he was flashy, but because he was steady. Because when tensions rose, he lowered his voice instead of raising it. The shuttle hummed softly as it approached the Grand Concourse, a neutral meeting ground built by all Concord members over centuries. Today, representatives from 23 species would gather to vote on humanity's formal inclusion in the Interstellar Trade Network. It wasn't full membership yet, but it was the last major step. For 50 years, humans had traded quietly, explored cautiously, and proven they could follow galactic law. Now they asked only for a seat at the table. Daniel reviewed his notes one last time. His aide, a young linguist named Leo Martinez, sat across from him, nervously tapping his fingers on his datapad. "You think they'll say yes?" Leo asked. "They'll say yes," Daniel said. Not because he was certain, but because doubt wouldn't help anyone now. Even the Krell have stopped calling us hairless apes in official briefings. Progress is slow, but it's real. The shuttle banked gently, lining up with the landing spire. Outside, honor guards from the host species, the gentle six-limbed Varelli, stood in formation, their iridescent robes shimmering in the twin moonlight. Everything looked perfect, peaceful, promising. Then, without warning, the shuttle shuddered. A sharp crack split the air. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Leo grabbed the armrests, eyes wide. "What was that?" Before Daniel could answer, a second impact rocked the vessel. The hull groaned. Oxygen hissed from a ruptured line. The pilot's voice came over the comm, strained and urgent. "We've been hit. Unknown origin. Engines failing." Daniel unbuckled and moved quickly, helping Leo up. "Stay calm. Brace for emergency landing." But there would be no landing. A third explosion tore through the aft section. The shuttle spun violently, breaking apart in midair. Debris scattered across the sky like burning leaves. The last thing Daniel saw was the Grand Concourse, so close, yet impossibly far, before darkness swallowed everything. On the ground, the Varelli guards watched in horror as the human delegation's shuttle disintegrated just kilometers from the summit hall. Emergency teams scrambled, but it was too late. No survivors. No black box. No clear cause. The wreckage was charred beyond recognition, its data cores melted by an energy signature no one could identify. Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. Humanity's ambassador was dead. Their entire delegation gone. The Galactic Concord convened an emergency session. Species that rarely agreed on anything united in one sentiment. This was a tragedy. Statements of condolence poured in. The Varelli offered full reparations. The Krell hegemony, long suspicious of human expansion, remained silent. But their silence was noted. Most expected Earth to respond with outrage. Demands for investigation. Maybe even threats of withdrawal from future talks. That's what any other young species would do. Lash out, make noise, demand justice they couldn't enforce. But Earth said nothing. No press conferences. No emergency broadcasts. No fiery speeches from the president. The United Earth government went completely quiet. Its embassies across the Concord closed their doors for mourning. Its ships halted all non-essential travel. Even its usual chatter on the Galactic Comms network fell silent. To the rest of the galaxy, this silence was confusing. Some thought humanity was too shocked to act. Others assumed they were plotting something, but what? Humans had no fleet to speak of. No superweapons, no hidden alliances. They were barely a footnote in galactic affairs, known more for their strange music and stubborn optimism than for military might. On Zenthar Prime, the capital world of the Concord, diplomats whispered in corridors. "They'll send a formal protest next week," said a Thalorian envoy. or maybe recall their ambassador, if they even appoint a new one. They might skip the next summit entirely, added a Zenthar trade minister. Smart move, honestly. Let tempers cool. No one imagined what was really happening. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a bunker shielded by layers of rock and quantum encryption, President Lisa Morgan sat at the head of a long steel table. Around her sat the leaders of Earth's defense, science, and intelligence branches. The air was thick with tension, but no one shouted. They had passed that stage hours ago. "We traced the energy residue," said General Ray Owens, his voice low. "It matches Krell experimental pulse charges, banned under Concord Treaty 7. But no Krell ship was near Varelli's, countered Dr. Maya Ruiz, head of the Advanced Physics Division. And the detonation pattern. It was too precise, too clean. This wasn't just sabotage. It was a message. A message to us, Lisa said quietly. She wasn't a tall woman, but her presence filled the room. She had commanded destroyers in the Martian border skirmishes before entering politics, and she knew the difference between an accident and an act of war. She looked around the table. "They think we're weak. They think we'll cry, then crawl back with our tails between our legs." She stood. "We won't." She didn't declare war. She didn't call for revenge. Instead, she gave a single order. Activate Horizon. No one questioned her. They had prepared for this moment longer than anyone knew. Project Horizon wasn't a weapon. Not exactly. It was a demonstration, one humanity had hoped never to use. But hope, like peace, had its limits. Above the moon, in the silent dark of orbital dockyards, engineers began work on the Odyssey. Its hull gleamed under construction lamps, untouched by battle, unmarked by pride. It carried no missiles, no railguns, no plasma cannons. What it carried was far stranger, and far more terrifying to those who understood what it could do. Back on Varelli's, cleanup crews finished removing the last of the shuttle debris. The Grand Concourse stood empty, its summit postponed indefinitely. The galaxy moved on, assuming humanity would too, quietly, meekly, as expected. But in the quiet of Earth's command centers, in the hum of lunar reactors, in the focused eyes of people like Kyle Dawson and Elena Ruiz and Leo Martinez's grieving sister back in San Diego, something new was being born, not anger, not vengeance, clarity, and the galaxy would soon learn the difference. They killed our ambassador. Humanity's response stunned the galaxy part. The silence from Earth lasted 17 days. To the rest of the galaxy, it felt like forever. Diplomats on Zenthar Prime checked their comms every hour, expecting a message, a protest, even a tearful eulogy broadcast across the networks. But nothing came. Human trade ships stopped responding to hails. Their embassies remained shuttered. Even their cultural channels, once filled with music, poetry, and strange cooking shows, went dark. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the stars. But on Earth, silence was not emptiness. It was focus. Deep inside Cheyenne Mountain, President Lisa Morgan walked the narrow corridors of the Unified Defense Bunker, her boots echoing against steel floors. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night since the attack. Her eyes were tired, but her steps were sure. She stopped outside a reinforced door marked only with a symbol, a circle split by a single line, the old Project Horizon insignia. Inside, the air hummed with quiet urgency. Dozens of scientists, engineers, and officers moved between holographic displays, voice low, hands steady. At the center of it all stood Kyle Dawson, sleeves rolled up, fingers dancing over a floating control panel. He was young for his role, only 32, but he had helped design the Odyssey's core systems from scratch. Beside him, Dr. Maya Ruiz studied a stream of quantum readouts, her brow furrowed in concentration. "They're ready," Kyle said without looking up as Lisa entered. "The resonance matrix is stable. Shield harmonics are synced. We can jump on your order." Lisa didn't answer right away. She walked to the main display where a rotating image of the Odyssey floated in soft blue light. The ship was sleek and smooth, built more like a seed than a weapon. No gun turrets, no armor plating, just clean lines and hidden power. It looked harmless. That was the point. "How long until full readiness?" she asked. 48 hours, Maya replied. "We need to run one last calibration on the entanglement drive. If we rush it, we risk a cascade failure." Lisa nodded. "Then we wait." But not a minute longer, she turned to the room. No one outside this bunker knows what Horizon really is. The Conquered thinks we're mourning. The Krell think we're broken. Let them believe it. But when the Odyssey leaves orbit, they'll understand. She paused, her voice dropping. This isn't about revenge. It's about respect. And if we have to show them what we can do to earn it, then so be it. Back on the lunar surface at the Armstrong shipyards, workers in pressurized suits moved like ghosts across the Odyssey's hull. They installed the final phase coils, checked every seal, and ran diagnostics on the ship's neural core. Captain Elena Ruiz oversaw it all from the command deck, her voice calm over the comms. She was Maya's younger sister, but where Maya was thoughtful and slow to speak, Elena was sharp and direct. She had flown deep-range scouts near the Kuiper Belt, and once landed a damaged vessel on Europa with no nav systems. She didn't need flashy titles to command trust. "Bridge, this is engineering," a voice crackled in her earpiece. "Resonance emitter online, power at 98%. "Copy that," Elena said. "Run a low-level test, just enough to ping the far side array." A moment later, a soft chime echoed through the ship. On a monitor, a signal pulsed outward, silent, invisible, harmless. It reached a sensor station on the moon's dark side and shut it down for exactly 10 seconds before rebooting automatically. No damage, no explosion, just control. Elena smiled faintly. "Good. That's exactly what we want." Meanwhile, in Geneva, the United Earth Council met in secret session. Most members had never heard of Project Horizon. They knew only that Earth was preparing a response and that it would change everything. Some were afraid. Others were proud. None argued. "We're not declaring war," Lisa told them over secure link. "We're showing the galaxy that peace isn't weakness, and that when you kill our people, you don't get to decide how we answer." On the streets of cities across Earth, life went on. Children went to school. Farmers tended their fields. Artists painted. But there was a quiet tension in the air, like the hush before a storm. People didn't know the details, but they felt it. Something was coming. In Rio, a teenager named Mateo played an old recording of Ambassador Cruz's last public speech. "We don't need to be the strongest," Cruz had said. "We just need to be honest." Mateo didn't know if honesty would be enough now, but he hoped Earth's answer would make his little sister proud. 48 hours passed at 300 Earth Standard Time. The Odyssey detached from its docking cradle. No fanfare, no broadcast. Just a single thruster burn that sent it gliding toward the edge of lunar orbit. Inside, Elena sat in the captain's chair, hands resting lightly on the armrests. Her crew, 23 men and women, all volunteers, were at their stations, calm and ready. "Final systems check," Elena said. "All green," came the reply from every station. "Engage slipstream on my mark." She took a breath, then gave the order. The stars outside blurred. Space folded. The Odyssey vanished from the Sol system. On Earth, Lisa Morgan stood alone on a balcony overlooking the Rockies. The sky was clear. She imagined the ship already light years away, carrying not bombs, but a message written in physics and restraint. She thought of Daniel Cruz. She hoped he would have approved. In the conquered capital, no alarm sounded. No sensors blinked red. The galaxy slept, unaware that humanity's silence had ended, and that its voice would soon echo across the stars in a way no one expected. The Odyssey was on its way to Zenthar Prime. Not to fight. Not to destroy. But to show them what peace truly looked like when it wore armor made of light and logic. And when it arrived, the galaxy would finally understand. Humans did not shout when wronged. They simply made sure it never happened again. They killed our ambassador. Humanity's response stunned the galaxy part. 3. The Odyssey dropped out of slipstream just beyond the outer sensor net of Zenthar Prime. No warning. No announcement. One moment, space was empty. The next, a human vessel hung in the void like a thought made real. It did not accelerate. It did not power up weapons. It simply appeared, silent and still, a smooth silver shape against the star-flecked dark. On the bridge, Captain Elena Ruiz watched the main display. Dozens of ship icons blinked into view. Patrol cutters, freighters, Concord defense cruisers, all now swiveling toward the newcomer. Hails began flooding in, first in calm tones, then with rising urgency. "Unidentified vessel, identify yourself." "This is Concord Space. State your purpose." You are in violation of approach protocol. Elena ignored them all. She turned to her comms officer, a quiet man named Paul Finch. Broadcast the message. All channels. Every language in the Concord database. Paul nodded and pressed a single key. Across Zenthar Prime's orbital ring, in every embassy, on every bridge, in every public square with a public screen, the same words appeared in Thalorian glyphs, Krell gutturals, Virelli harmonic script, and plain Earth English. We came in peace. You chose violence. Now witness what peace could have spared you. Then, before anyone could react, the Odyssey pulsed. It was not a sound, not a flash, not an explosion. It was a wave, silent, invisible, moving faster than light, passing through metal, energy fields, and living tissue alike. It lasted less than a second, but in that moment, every artificial system within 1,000,000 kilometers went dark. Lights in the orbital habitats flickered out. Freighters coasted to a stop as engines died. Defense turrets froze mid-turn. Even the great planetary shield over Zenthar Prime, the pride of Concord engineering, shimmered and vanished. For 30 seconds, the entire system held its breath. Then just as suddenly, everything came back online. Life support resumed. Engines restarted. Shields reformed. No damage, no casualties. Just a perfect, controlled pause, as if the galaxy itself had been asked to stop and listen. Panic erupted. On the Krell flagship Iron Maw, Admiral Vrock slammed his fist on the console. What is this trick? His ship's weapons were dead. His comms silent. His crew scrambling in the dim emergency lighting. He had never felt so helpless. In the Grand Concourse on Zenthar, the High Arbiter, a tall, ageless being of the Zenthari species, stared at the viewscreen, his 6 eyes wide with disbelief. He had seen wars, rebellions, supernovas weaponized. But this was something else. It was not destruction. It was dominion without force. Back on the Odyssey, Elena watched the chaos unfold on her sensors. Ships drifting, stations rebooting, millions of beings staring at their screens wondering if they had dreamed it. She felt no joy, no pride. Only resolve, maintain position, she said. Keep the field on standby. And open a channel to the High Arbiter. Priority 1. Paul hesitated. He might not answer. He will, Elena said. And he did. The Arbiter's face filled the main screen. Pale blue skin, silver markings, eyes that had watched empires rise and fall. Human vessel, he said, his voice calm but strained. Explain what you have done. My name is Captain Elena Ruiz, she replied. We are not here to fight. We are here to show you what happened to our ambassador was not just an attack on Earth, but a test of the entire Concord's integrity. The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. You disabled our defenses. You could have destroyed us. But we didn't, Elena said. That's the point. We could have turned your cities to ash. Instead, we turned off your lights for 30 seconds. Think about that, she leaned forward slightly. Now, let me show you something else. With a nod, Paul transmitted a data packet. It contained everything. Energy traces from the shuttle wreckage, encrypted Krell fleet logs, financial transfers to a black market arms dealer on the fringe world of Draxis 9. Proof, clear, undeniable, that the Krell hegemony had ordered the assassination of Ambassador Daniel Cruz to block humanity's entry into the Concord. The Arbiter's expression did not change, but his hands trembled slightly. This changes everything. It should, Elena said, but we're not asking you to punish them. We're asking you to see us, not as newcomers, not as primitives, but as equals who chose mercy when we could have chosen fire. Outside, the Krell fleet stirred. 3 dreadnoughts, massive jagged ships bristling with plasma cannons, broke formation and accelerated toward the Odyssey. Their comms blared across open channels. Surrender your vessel or be annihilated. Human scum, you dare challenge the hegemony? We will erase your ship from history. Elena didn't flinch. She turned to her tactical officer, a woman named Dana Cole. They're locking weapons. Yes, Captain, Dana said, her voice steady. Then remind them why they shouldn't. Dana tapped her console. The Odyssey pulsed again. This time, the effect was more focused. Only the Krell ships went dark. Their engines died. Their shields collapsed. Their weapons powered down. Even their internal lights blinked out. The three dreadnoughts drifted like dead whales in the void, helpless, humiliated. On the bridge of the lead ship, Admiral Vrock roared in fury, pounding on unresponsive controls. His crew stared at him in silence, fear in their eyes. For the first time, the Krell knew what it felt like to be powerless. Back on Zenthar, the other conquered species watched in stunned silence. The humans had not fired a shot, had not killed a single soul, yet they had neutralized the most aggressive fleet in the galaxy, with less effort than it took to brew a cup of tea. The High Arbiter closed his eyes. When he opened them, he spoke not to Elena, but to his own council. Recall all defense fleets, and prepare a new charter. Humanity will have its seat, Elena nodded. Good, but remember, this wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Next time, we won't turn the lights back on. She ended the transmission. The Odyssey hung in space, small against the stars, yet larger than anything the galaxy had ever known. Around it, ships that once saw humans as pests now gave them wide berth. Not out of fear alone, but out of something deeper, respect. And for the first time in its history, humanity did not ask for a place among the stars. It simply took it. They killed our ambassador. Humanity's response stunned the galaxy part. The Krell dreadnoughts floated in silence, their dark hulls reflecting the distant glow of Zenthar Prime. Inside, Admiral Vrock paced the command deck like a caged beast. His crew sat frozen at their stations, not from fear of him, but from the cold weight of what had just happened. Their ship, the pride of the hegemony armed with enough firepower to glass a continent, had been shut down by a single pulse from a vessel less than a third its size. No explosions, no boarding parties, just stillness. Total, humiliating stillness. Brock's fists clenched. He had spent his life believing strength was measured in tonnage and plasma yield. Now that belief lay in ruins. But pride is a stubborn thing, and the Krell did not surrender. On the Odyssey, Captain Elena Ruiz watched the dreadnoughts through the main viewer. She knew what was coming. The Krell would not accept this. They could not. Their entire identity was built on dominance, on the idea that might made right. To be shown otherwise was worse than death to them. Captain, said Dana Cole from Tactical, they're rebooting systems, slowly, but they're coming back online. Elena nodded. They'll try again. Not with weapons this time. They'll send a message instead, bluster, lies. Maybe a fake confession from some low-level officer to save face. She was right. Minutes later, a Krell comm signal broke through, not on open channels, but directed straight to the High Arbiter's office. It claimed the attack on the human shuttle had been the work of rogue elements, disgraced officers acting without orders. The hegemony, the message insisted, regretted the incident and offered appropriate reparations in the form of trade concessions. It was a classic move. Deny, deflect, distract, but the galaxy was no longer listening. Across Zenthar Prime, species that had once tolerated the Krell's bullying now turned away. The Varelli closed their shared research labs. The Thalorian suspended all joint patrols. Even the Zenthari, longtime allies of the hegemony, issued a statement calling for a full investigation under new conquered oversight. The Krell were being isolated. And they knew it. Back on Earth, President Lisa Morgan received the news in her office. She stood by the window watching rain fall over the mountains. Her aide, a young man named Jason Kim, stood by the door holding a data slate. The Arbiter just confirmed it, he said. They're drafting a new charter, full voting rights for Earth and sanctions on the Krell leadership. Lisa didn't smile. Good, but this isn't over. The Krell won't accept being sidelined. They'll either change or they'll lash out. She was right about that too. 3 days later, a Krell envoy arrived at the Grand Concourse, not to negotiate, but to issue an ultimatum. If the Concord moved forward with sanctions, the hegemony would withdraw entirely, taking its trade routes and military support with it. It was a threat they had used before, and it had always worked. But this time, the High Arbiter did not flinch. Then go, he said simply, and know this. If you ever threaten a member world again, you will face not just humanity, but all of us. The envoy left in stunned silence. Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey, Elena received new orders from Earth not to stay, not to escalate, but to return home. We've made our point, Lisa's message read. Now let them rebuild trust the hard way, with actions, not words. Elena agreed. But before she left, she requested one final meeting with the High Arbiter himself. They met not on the concourse but aboard the Odyssey, in the ship's small observation lounge. The Arbiter came alone, wrapped in a simple gray robe, his usual regalia left behind. He looked older now, as if the last week had aged him centuries. "You could have destroyed us," he said, gazing out at the stars. "We could have," Elena replied. "But then we'd be no different from those who killed our ambassador." The Arbiter turned to her. "Why show mercy?" "Because peace isn't the absence of power," she said. "It's the choice not to use it." He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "What do you want from us now?" "Nothing," she said. "Just remember this moment. Remember that humanity doesn't seek to rule, but we will not be ruled either." When the Arbiter left, he carried more than data or demands. He carried understanding. The Odyssey prepared for its journey home. As it powered up its slipstream drive, ships from a dozen species formed a silent escort, not out of duty, but respect. They followed it to the edge of the system, then peeled away one by one, their lights blinking in farewell. Back on Earth, people gathered in cities and towns, not because they knew the ship was coming, but because they felt something shift in the air. The fear was gone. In its place was quiet pride. In Nairobi, President Morgan stood in a schoolyard watching children play under the sun. A little girl ran up to her holding a drawing of a silver ship with wings. "Is that the Odyssey?" she asked. Lisa smiled. "Yes, and it brought us something better than victory." "What's that?" the girl asked. "A chance," Lisa said, "to build something new." On the moon, engineers began work on a second Horizon-class vessel, not for war, but for exploration. Its name would be Horizon's Promise, and it would carry scientists, not soldiers. The Krell hegemony, meanwhile, entered a period of unrest. Reformists rose within their ranks, demanding transparency and change. The old guard resisted, but the tide had turned. Even their own people had seen what true strength looked like, and it wasn't in cannons or conquest. Across the galaxy, scholars rewrote their texts. Diplomats changed their tone, and in every council chamber one phrase began to echo: "Remember Varellis." Not as a tragedy, but as a turning point. Humanity had not shouted, had not burned worlds, had not demanded blood. It had simply shown what it could do, and then walked away. And in doing so, it earned something no treaty could grant: the galaxy's awe. The Odyssey slipped into the void once more, its mission complete. Behind it, the stars burned a little brighter. "They killed our ambassador," humanity's response stunned the galaxy part. The Odyssey returned to Earth not with fanfare, but with quiet grace. It glided into lunar orbit as the sun rose over the Pacific, its hull still clean, untouched by battle. No missiles had been fired. No hull had been breached. Yet the ship carried more weight than any warship in history. It carried the moment humanity stepped out of the shadows and into the light of the galaxy, not as beggars, not as threats, but as equals who had proven their worth without shedding a drop of blood. On the ground, people did not cheer. They watched, they listened, they understood. In Tokyo, a teacher paused her lesson to show her students the live feed of the ship docking. In Buenos Aires, an old man stood on his balcony and whispered a prayer of thanks. In Cairo, children gathered around a public screen, eyes wide, as Captain Elena Ruiz stepped onto the gantry and removed her helmet. Her face was calm, tired, but proud. President Lisa Morgan met her at Armstrong Station, not with medals or speeches, but with a simple handshake and a quiet, "Welcome home." There would be time for ceremonies later. For now, the world needed to see that this was not the end of something, but the beginning. Within days, the new Concord Charter was ratified. Earth was granted full membership with equal voice in trade, security, and exploration. The Krell hegemony, stripped of its influence, faced internal collapse as reformers demanded accountability for the assassination. Their former allies turned away. Their markets shrank, and for the first time in centuries, the hegemony had to ask for help, not demand it. But humanity did not gloat. When the Krell's food freighters began failing due to sanctions, Earth sent aid, not as charity but as a test. "Let them see what cooperation looks like," Lisa told her council. And so engineers from Nairobi and Jakarta helped repair Krell life support systems. Not because they forgave, but because they believed in a better way. The galaxy noticed. On Zenthar Prime, the High Arbiter stood before the newly reformed Concord Assembly. Beside him sat Earth's new ambassador, a woman named Nora Bennett, a biologist who had once studied coral reefs in the Caribbean. She wore no uniform, only a simple blue suit with a small pin shaped like a sprouting seed. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. "We do not seek to lead," she said. "We seek to listen and to build." Her words spread faster than any weapon ever could. Across star systems, young beings began learning Earth languages, not for trade, not for espionage, but because they wanted to read human poetry, watch old films, understand how a species so young could wield such power with such restraint. Libraries on Thalor added sections on Earth philosophy. Music from Rio and Sol played in cafes on distant moons. And in schools, children were taught not just about human technology, but about human choices. Back on Earth, life changed in quiet ways. The Unified Defense Council shifted focus from weapons to deep space rescue and disaster response. Project Horizon was declassified, not as a secret weapon, but as a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it chose wisdom over wrath. The Odyssey was retired to a museum in Geneva, its bridge open to visitors, its systems displayed not to inspire fear, but curiosity. Kyle Dawson, who had helped build the ship, now taught engineering at a university in Denver. He often told his students, "The greatest power isn't in what you can destroy, it's in what you choose not to." Maya Ruiz led a new international team studying peaceful applications of resonance fields, using them to stabilize failing stars for terraforming, or to gently disable rogue AI without erasing their memories. Her work saved more lives than any war ever could. And Elena Ruiz? She took a sabbatical. She traveled. She walked the beaches of her childhood in Oregon, watched sunsets in Santorini, and sat quietly in a temple in Kyoto. She needed to remember the world she had protected, not as a captain, but as a person. One evening she received a message from the High Arbiter. It contained no official business. Just a single line written in Earth English. "Thank you for showing us that strength and kindness are not opposites." She smiled and deleted it. Some things didn't need to be saved. They just needed to be felt. Months passed. The galaxy settled into a new rhythm. Trade flourished. Joint research stations bloomed in the asteroid belts. And for the first time, species that had eyed each other with suspicion began sharing stories over shared meals. At a summit on Mars, a planet once scarred by human conflict, now a neutral meeting ground, ambassadors from 24 worlds gathered. Among them was Nora Bennett. She did not sit at the head of the table. She sat in the middle, listening more than speaking. When asked about Earth's secret, she simply said, "We remembered that we are all fragile, and that true courage is protecting others even when you've been hurt." The room fell silent. Then one by one, the ambassadors nodded. Back on Earth, President Morgan gave her final address from a schoolyard in Nairobi, just as she had promised. Children sat cross-legged on the grass, watching her with bright eyes. She did not speak of war or victory. She spoke of gardens, of how you must pull weeds not with rage but with care, so you don't harm the roots of what you're trying to grow. "We are all gardeners now," she said, "of peace, of trust, of hope." The children clapped, not because they understood everything, but because they felt it. And far above, in the silent dark between stars, new ships began their journeys. Not warships, not spies, but vessels named Horizon's Promise, Cruise's Light, and Varelli's Dawn. They carried scientists, artists, teachers, and dreamers. Their mission was simple: to meet the galaxy not with fear, but with open hands. The galaxy, in turn, opened its arms. For the first time in its long history, it did not see humanity as strange or weak or dangerous. It saw them as something rare, a species that, when struck, chose not to strike back but to rise. And in that choice, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter.